Hear me out. I don't think it's crazy realistic, but I'm seeing the name Ryan Day start to float around when it comes to Texas A&M's coaching job.
You are Locked On Aggies, your daily podcast on the Texas A&M Aggies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on into Locked On Aggies. I'm your host, Andrew Stefaniak. Thanks for making Locked On Aggies your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnCollege and use code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Daily fantasy sports made easy. So, a name I have now seen on two different Texas A&M publications is Ryan Day. Now, Ohio State fans who are inevitably going to jog over to the comment section, I don't know if he's going to get a phone call. I have no idea, but it's a name floating around. And so what we're going to do is we're going to talk about it. Don't know if we'll get a phone call. Don't know if you would answer the phone call, but we're going to talk about why I think he'd be a great hire for the Aggies. So, and then a concern for him being the next head coach at Texas A&M. So Ryan Day, mostly throughout his career, ACC, Big Ten, NFL guy. He's coached a lot of different places, which I think is a good thing. He, like I said, mostly ACC, Big Ten, NFL. He was a grad assistant at Florida in 2005, which is funny because I think one of the coaches we talked about, it might have been Jed Fish, was also a grad assistant, maybe a graduate actually, but I forget now which one it was. But Ryan Day took over in 2019, and he was the big coach. He was the Big Ten Coach of the Year. 45-6 is his record. And I haven't added together what they are this year, but they haven't lost, and they played like 10 games, so 55-6, I guess. Don't quote me on that because, like I said, maybe this year's wins are added. I haven't done the math on that. But what Ryan Day does that excites me when I look at this, these are his recruiting classes since he's taken over. And just where they finished in 24/7 Sports, that's the one I always use. 7, 5, 2, 4, 4, and then so far in the 2024 class, 2. That is elite recruiting. Very, very elite recruiting over at Ohio State. And, once again, I'll tell you this. Ryan Day and his coaching staff has turned a lot of players into NFL players over the last few seasons. That's just a university that kind of like Bama and Georgia, they just churn out NFL talent, especially like the wide receiver position. Look at Jackson Smith and Jigba over with the Seahawks. And then you got Marvin Harrison, who's going to be a great player at the next level. Ohio State just takes talented players and gets them to the next level and competes for national championships while doing that. So I think I've heard people, the issue that I think people have with Day is he has struggled to kind of win the big game last year in the playoff. I know that, they lost to Michigan a little bit during his tenure, which I think could kind of cause – that's the publication for Texas A&M that wrote maybe Ryan Day is a candidate. Kind of talked about it like if they lose to Michigan this year, maybe does Ross Bjork make that phone call the day after and say, hey, come over here because it might get a little, not so great for you over there if you lose that football game. So I think he would be a good candidate. The one thing that I would say that he doesn't have, aside from the fact that he has been everywhere and he was at Florida, he doesn't have, roots recruiting down south. And I don't want to get super into talking about that because in segment 2, we're going to have that conversation. And the reason I want to have that conversation is because we have a few coaches. We've had a few coaches we've discussed that I think are great football coaches, but they haven't really been Southern recruiters. And we're going to talk about how big of a deal that is. I think that, and I'm going to make both sides of the argument. I think it's a big deal, but we're going to talk about both sides of the argument. So we'll have that conversation here in a minute. But Ryan Day, I mean, once again, will he take the phone call? I don't know. So Ohio State fans, like I said, those of you that are here, I don't know if he'll even take the phone call, but I'm seeing the name float around, so we're going to discuss it. I think he would be a good hire. I do. This is what I look at. I look at recruiting, I look at results, I look at NFL talent. Ryan Day, during his time at Ohio State, has done all that. Now, once again, I think you could argue that he needs to be better in the big game. No question there. But I just feel like if you're putting yourself in a position every single season to be in a big game, then you're going to get one here and there. Could it be this year? I don't know. I don't know who's going to win. I mean, here's the deal. I think a great example of can he win the big game will be on Saturday when, Michigan and Ohio State face off, rivalry weekend. That's going to be a fun football game. That's going to be a really fun football game. I'm just excited to watch that as a fan. But that could be a great, can he win the big game? Well, we'll find out on Saturday in their most important game of the season. That is going to, give them a chance to make a deep run at this. And but I mean, I do think that Ryan Day would be a great hire. Like I just said a minute ago, the three things that I look at in this are recruiting, are wins, and turning your players into NFL talent. He's done all that. His recruited class, like I said, if you did the average of this 7.52, 4.42, I think it'd be in the 3 to probably the 4 range. You know what I mean? I mean, his recruiting classes are really good, and he's developing that NFL talent, those talented players, turning them into NFL players, and winning football games while they do it. So, I do think Ryan Day would be a home run hire for the Aggies, because we've talked about what is the issue at Texas A&M. You have all the resources in the world. What do you not have? You didn't have a coach who was taking this talented roster, these 5 stars, and turning that talent into wins on the field and NFL players. That's what Coach Fisher wasn't doing. That's what the next coach needs to do. And Ryan Day, like I said, since he took over at Ohio State in 2019, that's all he's done is win football games, recruit at a high level, and develop talent. That is what is going to succeed at Texas A&M. That is how you're going to beat the Alabamas and the Georgias and the Texases and the Oklahomas, when they come to this. That's how you're going to beat those teams, is continue to recruit at a high level and develop the talent you're recruiting. And I think Ryan Day can do that. So he's a, and now let me add this caveat for those who might go looking for who wrote that for Texas A&M in the media about Ryan Day and potentially being the coach. They made the note of this would be a home run hire. This is a shot in the dark. But I've seen it floating around, and I wanted to have the conversation about it because I think Ryan Day would be a great hire. The only argument you can make on him is he hasn't really doesn't have the Southern ties, when it comes to recruiting. That'd be the only knock I have on him taking over. So will Ryan Day take the phone call? I don't know. I really don't. But maybe a loss to Michigan on Saturday would give Ross Bjork the perfect foot in the door to give him a phone call and say, hey, we'll treat you great down here in Aggie land. So it'll be interesting to see if that phone call is made and that phone call is taken. But it's a fun conversation to have. Let me know in the comments, would you be happy if Ryan Day was Texas A&M's next head coach? And frankly, do you think it's realistic? Because I'm kind of maybe, maybe not. Let me know those two things in the comments. Now we are going to talk a little bit about how important the next Texas A&M head coach's Southern roots in recruiting is, and then talk about some things for the LSU game coming up on Saturday. We'll do that coming up right here on Locked On Aggies. First, we're going to talk about our friends over at Prize Picks. I love Prize Picks. It's something I use on a daily basis. What I love about it is you aren't competing with betting wizards and sharps that know everything about everything. It's you versus you. you are going to see a number and you are going to click one of two buttons. You're going to click over and you are going to click under. Simple as that. They're going to give you a number. We got Thanksgiving football coming up. Cowboys are playing, right? CeeDee Lamb, I did see he just popped up on the injury report for the walkthrough as limited with an ankle injury. Need him in fantasy, need him healthy. But his receiving yard line, let's say it's 88. Is he going to go over or under? I would never bet the under on that, but you see what I'm saying? You pick over or under. You can do 2 up to 6 picks, and every pick you do, it multiplies the money more. It's just a ton of fun. You have got to go check out Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. So, how important is having Southern roots or ties when it comes to the recruiting trail? I'm going to make both sides of the argument. Okay, well, I'm going to make both sides of the argument, and then we will kind of, move through it here. But this is a conversation to me that needs to be had for this job. Needs to be. Recruiting in the state of Texas is a big deal. Having those ties in the state of Texas is a big deal. Having SEC roots is a big deal when it comes to coaching at Texas A&M, coaching in the South as a whole. So yeah, I would say it's a big deal. That's why a guy like a Jeff Traylor, right? Been a high school coach in Texas for a very long time. He was at Texas, helped with different things there, was probably a big part of recruiting there. And then he goes over to UTSA and now once again, he's recruiting in Texas. Now, when I say Jeff Traylor, I'm bringing up his name because he's a guy who's, has real deep roots when it comes to recruiting in Texas. I'm not saying that because he's been very, we're not talking about that. We're talking about Jeff Traylor. I mean, we're talking about our team, our players. So I don't know what his deal. I still don't think he'll be Texas A&M's head coach. I did for a while. I've kind of backed off that. But the reason I bring his name up is because he is a guy who does have ties in recruiting in Texas, and that's a big deal. So, a guy like a Jed Fish, who is not really, a Southern guy, a guy like Ryan Day, who aside from, a year, and same with Jed Fish, like I think Jed Fish was the coach that was around Florida a little bit. Ryan Day, who's down at Florida for a grad assistant year once, haven't been in the SEC at all, really. Oh, one other thing I want to add about Ryan Day while I'm on the topic is, and I talked about this with Jed Fish as well, but I like NFL roots. Ryan Day has worked with some talented NFL quarterbacks, and I think that stuff you can sell to players, you can sell to recruits, and that it gets people excited. So I wanted to add that while I'm on it. I meant to mention that earlier. But, how important is it to be able to recruit in the South? I do think it is important. Now, I think my point I want to add to this is, do you not hire a coach because they haven't really recruited in the South? No, I don't think. So what I'm saying is, if I've talked about how much I like Jed Fish, and I've seen Aggie Twitter start to I think Aggie Twitter is starting to kind of follow and like Jed Fish as well. But a Ryan Day, a Jed Fish, those two guys, frankly, I know they might not have a ton of experience recruiting in Texas, but they have results, they have wins, they have NFL experience. Those are things you can show to recruits. And like I said, the other thing I will add to that is I just don't think if a Jed Fish or Ryan Day is like, yeah, I'll come be the next head coach at Texas A&M. I mean, I don't think Ross Brooks is going to go, well, you haven't really recruited in the state of Texas. I think we're going to have to go get somebody else. I don't like a Mike Elko. He's obviously recruited in Texas because he was the DC for a while. I don't, him and a Trailer. Obviously, they've been there and they've done that. But is that a reason that you hire them over a coach who is more exciting for this job or a better fit for this job? I don't think so. I think if you find a guy who is the perfect fit for this Texas A&M head coaching job, you go get them, regardless of a few question marks. Every time you make a hire, we're going to talk about LinkedIn in a minute, our friends over at LinkedIn. Every time you make a hire, there's risks. You make a coaching hire, there are always risks. Are they going to be the right guy? Will they succeed? Whoever you bring in to be Texas A&M's next head coach, there's going to be some risks. That's just the reality here. And while I think having roots when it comes to recruiting in the South, I think it's a big deal. I don't think it's a big enough deal to not hire a coach that you really want, or to say, we like this guy, but he hasn't really recruited in the South much. We're going to move on to somebody else. I don't think that's where I'm at when it comes to the coaching search. I think it's something. I also think recruiting is relationships in the college football world, in the high school football world. There the way this works is you make connections. And like a guy like Ryan Day, I pulled the recruiting numbers. I didn't look at this, but like I'm willing to bet he's recruited kids from the South. I know he recruits well in like California, but I mean, there's no way you have your recruiting classes are 7.52, 4.42, 4.2, and you're not getting some kids from the South. Now, I did not double check that. I should have. I didn't double check that he's pulled some kids from the South, but I'm sure he has in putting together these recruiting classes. That's something I'll look at that, and on the next episode of Locked On Aggies, I'll add that, like how many top guys has he gotten from the South. I'll look into that. But it's connections. It's all of that. That's what, is a lot of – that is what is very important when it comes to recruiting. It's not always where you're from. It's more who do you know. And a guy like Ryan Day, who's bringing in top 5 classes, bing, bang, 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 is going to be a guy who has connections, has these roots with different high school coaches, knows people, knows who to call, knows how to conversate with people and find recruits and all that. So I think that having Southern roots in recruiting is a big deal. But I think that if you don't, you're still going to the coach you bring in will still have some connections in the South. You could, and then other things you could do. You could bring in coordinators who have connections recruiting in the South. You can do all that. And then once again, it wouldn't be a reason for me to not bring in the coach you like for this job. So let me know that in the comments, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very interested to see your all's thoughts on that. I wouldn't not hire a coach because of Southern recruiting ties. So let me know your all's thoughts on that. If you disagree, if you agree, let me know either way. I think it's a fun conversation to be had because I think you could see it be a conversation that really takes off when Texas A&M hires their next coach, and maybe it is a Ryan Day, and maybe it is a Jed Fish. It is one of these more coaches who don't have a ton of ties in the South. So let me know that in the comments. I would appreciate that. It's a very fun and interesting topic when it comes to this coaching search. We're going to talk a little bit about this matchup with LSU. How fired up is the team going to be? And a couple important things that come to win in this game. We'll do that coming up right here on Locked On Aggies. First, we have got to talk about our friends over at LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn, I talk about it a ton, but it's such a great service. It's something that if you're an employer looking for employees, LinkedIn is the way to do it. If you're an employee looking for a job, LinkedIn can hook you up with different people that are hiring. It truly just is an all-around great service that is there to help people find jobs, help employers find the best employees for their small or large business. I love LinkedIn. You got to check it out if you're looking for a job or someone who's trying to find an employee for a job. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. So the last conversation I want to have here before we call it a day on Locked On Aggies is How fired up will Texas A&M be in this game? And then I have another conversation I want to have is Max Johnson, according to interim head coach Elijah Robinson, is day to day right now. Will we see him out there on Saturday? And we'll have that conversation here in a minute. But will A&M be fired up for this game? I think they will be. I think these players are going to play hard for Coach Robinson. I think it's really easy to get yourself up when you're going to face a really talented team that's had a good season at their place. It's going to be a crazy environment down in Baton Rouge. People get really fired up. It's a great atmosphere down there. One of the best in the SEC, as I always say, up there with Texas A&M and Florida and some of these other great environments in the conference. So will the team be fired up for this game? I think they will be. I think Coach Robinson, they're going to be fighting for him. These players have made it very clear that I think a lot of them want Coach Robinson to get the job. So I think that they'll be fighting. If he beats LSU, that's going to be a really good, thing to bring to the interview. Say, hey, well, you talk about winning the big game, winning on the road. Our road losing streak is snapped. Look, right here. I put it on my resume. Beat LSU on the road. That's back-to-back wins in my interim capacity. I think that the players will be playing for him, and I think he'll be coaching for that conversation to be had. So the team's going to be fired up for this game. I don't think they're going to be like, okay, one more game and we're done, and then we play our ball game, and then we get to go home. That's not what this team's about. This team is going to be fired up. They're going to be ready to rock and roll. They're going to be ready to play this football game. I feel very confident in that. It'll be interesting to see, how well they play. It's, we've talked about this team is banged up. You had like Ray Cottrell into the transfer portal. How's he? How is the locker room? I think the locker room's in a good spot right now, thanks to Coach Robinson and what he's done. But definitely, I think that there's some question marks that we're never going to have the answers to. So I do think the team's going to be fired up for this game. Now, another conversation I want to have, which is why I cut the will they be fired up conversation a little short, is Max Johnson being day-to-day. Of course, was at LSU for a point in time in his career. If he is healthy, if he is good to go, what do you do? What do you do? Henderson has been incredible, in my opinion, incredible during his time as the guy for A&M over the last couple of games. I mean, he's been incredible. He's 2-0. That it's kind of like for those hockey fans out there. I actually played the little goalie growing up on the ice. And, one thing people always talk about is, if your goalie gets hurt, your starter gets hurt in the playoffs, and your goalie, the backup comes in and he puts together a shutout and a 1-goal game with a 94% save percentage game, 3 games in a row, and you go, huh? And then the starter's back good to go. Do you ride the hot hand, or do you put back in the starter or the real guy? And that's the question: is do you ride with Henderson and say, listen, he's been really good, he's been too good, we gotta keep rolling with it, or do you throw Max Johnson back out there? It's an interesting conversation. And that might be a question on the SEC teleconference. I might actually ask Coach Robinson that, hey, have y'all thought about this? If both are good to go, are you going to roll with Max? Is that a decision? I don't know if he'll give me an answer, but I think it's a fun conversation to have. So I'll ask that question and we can talk about it on Friday's episode. But it's an interesting question. And like I said, Josh DeBerry is another guy who's day to day. It's going to be, we'll talk about keys. I have a couple keys to victory here. We'll save that for Friday's episode. But it will be an interesting game if you're not healthy in the secondary, because we know what LSU's offense can do. It's one of the best offenses in college football history. I know they've lost a few games they'd like back, a few games that I think that, that they'd like a redo on, but this is a talented LSU football team that can compete with anybody in the country, can beat anybody in the country. So it'll be interesting to see how the Aggies play on the road on Saturday. Will they hang around? Do they have a shot in this game? I do. I think they have a shot in this game because here's the deal. A team that has truly nothing to lose is dangerous. And that's what Texas A&M is right now. They're a football team that has absolutely nothing to lose, and that should be very scary for the LSU Tigers when this matchup happens on Saturday. That is going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Aggies. Thank you all so much for being here every single day, for being here for all this coaching search talk. It's a ton of fun. I've seen a lot of you everydayers in the comments. People are optimistic. People are excited. There's going to be this hire is going to be the one for Texas A&M. The Aggies are going to be back, and this team's going to be competing for national championships before we know it, no matter who the next head coach is. I truly, truly believe that. So on Thursday, on Thanksgiving, I'm getting ready to record with Caroline Fenton, the Locked On LSU host. Her and I will break down this ball game. That will be coming to you on Thursday on Thanksgiving. If you're driving somewhere to meet family, if you're driving home, it'll be a great thing to listen to while you're on the road, on the airplane, wherever you are. So that will be out Thursday on Thanksgiving. I'm thankful for all you listeners of Locked On Aggies. This has been the best couple of weeks in show history. And I'm really blessed and thankful to be a host and have all y'all everydayers here that, listen to me and love to hear what I got to say about Texas A&M. So thank you all so much. I'm very thankful for you. Have an incredible Thanksgiving with your families. Have a great time. Enjoy some turkey. Enjoy some football. And we will see you on Thanksgiving for a little Locked On crossover. Have a great Thanksgiving, everybody. We'll see you next time.